Good evening, Madam President. It is 6 p.m. I've started the recording.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Welcome, everyone. We're going to be led in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight by Mrs. Maida.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's have a moment of silence for all of our needy families and troubled souls. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby recesses into executive session for the following purpose.
Pardon me, ma'am. You want to
Okay.
you want to do roll call first, ma'am?
I'm sorry. Yes, I forgot about that. I'm so sorry, Mr. McCoy. Roll call, Mr. McCoy.
Miss Burton,
Here.
Miss Green,
Here.
Dr. Henderson,
Here.
Mr. Howard,
Here.
Mr. Levinstein,
Here.
Miss Maida,
Yeah, here.
Miss Mineo,
Here.
Mr. Stridard, Mr. Walker.
Yes. Here.
I'm so sorry, Mr. McCoy. I apologize. So now be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby recesses into executive session for the following purpose. Matter made confidential under FERPA, employment history of particular individuals, matters leading to the employment of particular individuals, collective bargaining under the Taylor Law, NTA, NASA, CSEA, and to obtain advice from legal counsel. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Miss Burton,
Yes.
Miss Green,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Miss Maida,
Yes.
Miss Mineo,
Yes.
Mr. Walker.
Yes.
Miss Mineo, the recording has started back up. You're all set.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. Welcome back. And I'm sorry, we're like a minute or two late. We have a public hearing on the 2021-2022 contract for excellence led by Dr. Spindler.
Thank you, Madam President, Board of Education. We're presenting to you tonight the Contract for Excellence public hearing. The Contract for Excellence was determined in 2007 and 2008 school year, when unprecedented increases to foundation aid formed a new category and required districts to allocate and restrict the increase in the funds to specific criterias. Although the funds have remained frozen since 2012, districts are still required by law to organize that specific increase within those categories discussed in tonight's presentation. Next slide, please. These funds are to support the following specific program areas: time on task, and what that means is implementing programs to improve student achievement; teacher and principal quality initiatives. This is professional development through program initiatives, through consultants, coaching that can be given either off campus or on campus by our directors as well. Middle school and high school restructuring initiatives mean hiring quality and qualified teachers, creating alternative programs for at-risk students, and innovative scheduling. Full day pre-K and kindergarten programs. We are fortunate enough to receive grant funding so that we can support our pre-K programs. However, that does not take account for the entire program. So we do use some of our foundation aid to support that. And full day kindergarten is not required by New York State, although we understand the importance of a full day kindergarten and support that with this foundation aid. And lastly, model programs for our English language learners. And you'll hear tonight information on our bilingual program, our newcomer program, and specialized support within our literacy program. Next slide.
Thank you, Dr. Spindler. So as Dr. Spindler just indicated, there are specific buckets of where the money is allocated. And this year, under the bucket of time on task, we will be focusing and spending the allotted money specifically on aligning our curriculum maps and our common assessments to ensure a horizontal and vertically aligned curriculum. Additionally, we'll be using it to roll out our next gen standards and our social studies framework and our P12 science learning standards. The implementation of our core curriculum materials, which you've heard a lot about over the last few months, which is our ARC, our American Reading Company, our Illustrative Math, and our Go Math. So the resources that we use to support those resources for our core curriculum. We also will use the funding for our RTI process and our data-driven instruction to make sure we're meeting the needs of our students and meeting their needs where they are to provide a very targeted and strategic curriculum and instruction. And also we will be using it to integrate technology into our instructional delivery, whether it be virtual, hybrid, or fully in person, and to ensure that our students are good digital citizens. Next slide, please. Dr. Spindler also talked about quality teacher and principal professional development. So some of the professional development buckets this year will be around our culturally responsive curriculum and our DEI, our diversity, equity, and inclusion. We've been talking about that a lot over the last few months. Also to ensure transformative literacy and constructive approach to teaching and learning. Those are two big buckets for curriculum and instruction this year. The workshop model, guided reading, and small group instruction is another focus for us so that we can really be specific and targeted in the instruction and meeting students where they are. This year, we are also fortunate enough to have 2 instructional coaches, one for ELA and one for math, out of our STO office to support our TSI and our CSI buildings. And lastly, to continue to build a framework to include parents as our partners in their children's education. Next slide, please. Our full day and pre-kindergarten programs, as Dr. Spindler indicated, we do have grants for our pre-K programs. However, we use these funds to support additional personnel. It's very helpful with transportation and ensuring that the teachers have the materials and resources necessary to provide high quality education for our students. Ms. Soto?
Thank you, Mrs. Moriarty. The following activities are allowed expenditures for C4E high school and middle school restructuring funding, as Dr. Spindler mentioned. This is to increase class sections to raise achievement, provide our undercredited students with an evening campus so they can graduate with their cohort, continue to utilize analytic data dashboards and web-based student management systems, support professional learning communities in content area and department grade levels. A great deal of work to improve student learning is accomplished through powerful conversations at each of these team levels. These conversations also allow for ongoing reflection, which allows stakeholders to gain insight about effective instructional practices that impact students' learning. Also, these funds support RTI, AIS, and MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support framework of interventions designed to address behavioral and academic challenges. These frameworks help support schools to identify struggling students early on so they may receive assistance early. Next slide, please. The following activities are allowed expenditures for C4E English language learners funding, which are programs aimed at supporting schools and adopting best practices for raising achievement among our English language learners. We have language labs, ENL services, bilingual education program, all things that Dr. Spindler mentioned, and ongoing curriculum and professional development for our teachers. So in conclusion, the Contract for Excellence provides resources for specific allowable programs. As we mentioned, there have been practical and purposeful allocation of resources to support equitable access to high quality learning opportunities, which we all believe raise the achievement of our students. Thank you for your time.
Board members, anybody have any questions? This is a community report, but you guys can ask questions. Thank you all. We're going to move on to public. Acting Superintendent, Mr. Forget.
Thank you, Madam President. This evening, we would like to honor and celebrate all of the hard work that our board members do. You guys work tirelessly. We are very blessed to have you as part of the team and guiding us and working with us. So this evening, we're going to start, and I'm going to turn this over to Mrs. Keach.
Thank you so much, Mr. Forget. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for the opportunity to showcase our amazing performing arts students this evening. And real quick, before we hear from the NFA Madrigals, it's my honor and pleasure to recognize the 9 NFA students that qualified for the Zone 9 Area All-State Festival to be held here at NFA on November 19th and 20th. And we're so excited for this, I can't even tell you. So our 9 students are Jasmine and Go in orchestra, Gerline Kaur, Grace Musante, Madison Valenti, Sophia Turanchak, Ariel Ramirez, Inez O'Shea in the treble choir, Manny Tejeda, and John O'Sullivan in the mixed chorus. Now we'll be having 2 concerts on Saturday, November 20th, one at 2:30 for the choirs and one at 4:30 for the band and the orchestra. And all are cordially invited to attend. And I just wanted to say thank you so much to Ms. Cassie and Ms. Antonelli Guido for all of their efforts in assisting the students in their goal in achieving the Area All-State status. At this time, in honor of School Board Recognition Week, the NFA Madrigals, under the direction of Ms. Jillian Cassie, will perform a piece called Grace from the group The October Project. And the text is about starting over, which is truly appropriate as we continue to emerge from the pandemic. And it reads, "Now in this moment, it's time to start over. Open your heart. You know there's nothing to forgive starting now." Thank you again for the opportunity to showcase the fine and performing arts students. Our heartfelt thanks to the Board of Ed for all of their service.
Nothing
Thank you, Mrs. Keach. Thank you, Madrigals. Thank you, Ms. Cassie. It was wonderful. The second thing we would like to provide for our board members. So today, hopefully, or yesterday, you received a care package of little tokens of swag from the district, and we hope you appreciate that. But I'd also like to share with you that in honor of your time and dedication to our students, our faculty, and our staff, the senior staff got together and we discussed how we could honor the work that you do. And we agreed that we would sponsor, as a senior team, 2 $500 scholarships in honor of the Newburgh Enlarged City School District Board of Education. The scholarships will be based on community involvement, community service, and volunteerism, as you model so well for our students. Thank you. We appreciate everything you do, and we will continue to move on for our students. I have one other thing to present. As you know, the Mid-Hudson Schools Study Council does awards and honors leaders across the region for excellence in their field. And we would like to share with the community this evening that Carol Mineo is the recipient of one of these awards. And I'd like you to read to you the award letter. Dear Carol, it is our pleasure to inform you that you have been selected by the Mid-Hudson Schools Study Council to receive one of this year's awards for excellence in school board service. On behalf of the officers, members, and staff of the Mid-Hudson Schools Study Council, we extend our sincere congratulations to you. Philip Howard nominated you for this honor, and an awards committee selected you from among the nominees submitted by school districts and BOCES in the 7 counties comprising the Mid-Hudson region. In the past, a celebratory dinner has been held to honor winners from the award categories of support staff, administration, school board service, community service, and pupil personnel services. Unfortunately, due to the ongoing pandemic restrictions, the Mid-Hudson Schools Study Council is again unable to host this event in person. As a 2021 honoree, you will, however, still be receiving commemorative medal, certificate from the Mid-Hudson Schools Study Council, which will be presented to you by your local school district. Again, congratulations on being named a 2021 Award for Excellence winner. On behalf of the Mid-Hudson Schools Study Council, we congratulate you and thank you for your work on behalf of the Hudson Valley students, schools, and communities. Sincerely, Tom Bon Jovi, President, and Roberta Green, Executive Director. Thank you, Ms. Mineo.
Thank you. This is the really nice medal. I am really embarrassed because I really am not one that goes for awards or that, but thank you very much, my Vice President, Mr. Howard. I thank you for nominating me, and I thank all of you because every award is a team effort, and the team that we have is really a great team. And I see us moving the district forward. So together, we're going to really move this district to be #1, not only in the area, but in the state and maybe in the country. So let's move us forward. And thank you. Thank you very much. Again, thanks, Mr. Howard, and thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mineo. Our next item is the COVID data update, and we have Mr. Baird to do his monthly presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Forget. Good evening, Board of Education members and seniors team and the community. As we've discussed, I will be presenting every board meeting an update as to where we are with all the requirements regarding COVID. So first slide, please. So I'm going to continue to update this slide as need be. I just want to kind of give some sense of what the trends look like and where we are with the various level different initiatives that we're trying to accomplish. So you can see that we have not done an updated vaccination at this point. We had our last one scheduled for October 12th, which was to give folks the second shot based on a previous administration. We are working with a number of local organizations to possibly sponsor some additional vaccinations, probably early November. We're all aware that the government has approved to have students 5 to 11-year-olds be vaccinated as well. So we've been working with local agencies as to whether that is better served in the pediatric offices or whether we should partner and have those vaccinations be available in our schools as we've done with students 16 or over. So again, we'll give you an update at the next meeting as to where we are with that, but we are certainly very aggressively pursuing what is the best approach for making sure that all our students who are eligible to have access to vaccinations. Additionally, I had mentioned on the last meeting that we have been doing a weekly screening for the unvaccinated employees. I have offered weekly updates as to how many employees have been vaccinated and how many positive tests. It again demonstrates the fact that we have been very low in our positivity rates relative to the number of tests that we've offered and provided. I also mentioned that there's been significant shortages, which I'll speak to some more in the subsequent slides, but we are working vigilantly to access additional testing. And as I mentioned 2 weeks ago, there's significant shortages that have made it us unable to test this past week. So right now, we did not test last week. We cannot test this week, but we hope to get it restarted very soon. Again, I'm just doing this baseline. I probably won't continue to make slide after slide after slide, but it's just important to see as we go through October 1st, October 7th, and keep going if you don't mind, just to kind of scroll through the different, this is October 8th, October 15th. The numbers have stayed consistent. These are our most recent numbers in terms of the number of both staff, and teachers and students who are either positive or vaccinated, or quarantined. And you can see the numbers have stayed relatively steady. And that's good news. While we certainly recognize the ongoing concern about positivity rates in our region, the schools have been relatively stable. And in spite of different public gatherings, holidays, we have not seen an uptick as we have in previous incarnations of the COVID crisis in the past year. So we're hopeful that this remains true as we go forward for the rest of the school year. So I just wanted to give an update because I believe there were some questions as to where we are. I did mention very explicitly 2 weeks ago that there is a national shortage of COVID tests. We worked with Abbott. We're working with a rep directly from the Abbott, who is the manufacturer of the Binex rapid test. They are located in Orlando, Florida. And in spite of all our conversations and the sense of urgency, they cannot provide the test any faster than is possible. They are simply overwhelmed. We ordered 3,000 tests from them well over a month ago, and they have not given us a potential ETA as to when those tests will be provided, but we certainly have contracted with them for the purchase of those tests. Additionally, at that time, we reached out to the United States Department of Health. They're the same folks who gave us the test last year for the surveillance testing. Those are the tests that we use this year to start the school year. We ordered an additional 2,000 tests from the state. I reach out to them by almost every week to ask where we are, and they have not been able to commit to testing. I'm worried that they're the same. They get their pool of testing from Abbott, and if Abbott's short, then they're going to be short. Though I've not been able to confirm that, but it believes they get it from the same source that we would. We have had ongoing conversations with Affinity Health. Affinity Health is a private organization that got a government contract for the distribution and of tests. We began that conversation with them back in August. At that time, only students were allowed to be tested based on their contract. In the past month, they've been able to expand their contract to allow both staff and students, but we have to guarantee that as part of the pool, students must be also screened. So we have also began a relationship with them. I've had ongoing conversations with them. They were hoping to have a distribution date of November 1st. They just called me late last night and told me that that does not seem possible. Like many of the organizations, it's not only inventory, they are simply overwhelmed by trying to set up the contracts with the thousands of agencies that they're required to work with. And she told me it's not even about demand for them. I'm sorry, supply for them. It's simply the demand is just overwhelming. So we're now looking maybe the 8th and the 9th for them to provide tests. And they will provide tests if it does work out on a weekly basis. So we'll establish the number of tests that we need for both the employees and the students, and they will be able to provide weekly pools of testing if and when it begins. And again, we're working with local agencies to see how we can work with them. Do they have tests as well? We had some promise with some local health organizations to see if they can maybe allow us to purchase directly from them for now for whatever inventory they have. And we're certainly pursuing that through the week. So I mentioned last time that there are really three essential expectations of a commissioner's determination that was written on September 2nd. The first was the students, that we have to make tests available to families to have their children who are unvaccinated to be screened on a weekly basis. So this is simply just I use the same language from the 10th. I'm just trying to be consistent here. But the last bullet says what we've done is we sent out a letter to all families on Friday, October 22nd, to assess whether they want their children to be screened. We're going to have a deadline of by the end of the week, and then we'll be able to report out how many families are actually interested. They have to provide consent, and that consent was also provided to them in the communication. I mentioned before, this has been an ongoing process. Again, the board on August, I believe it was the 10th, approved to have all unvaccinated folks to be tested. That was preemptive to the commissioner's determination on the 2nd. We've been doing that consistently until we ran out of tests. The additional responsibility that's in that determination is that we have to kind of canvass whether all employees are vaccinated or not. So we now have a Google form that will be going out this week, where folks are going to have to upload proof of either the card they received when they were vaccinated and/or their Excelsior pass. And at that point, we'll have to assess whether we have captured all folks who need to be tested or beyond. Certainly, if you're vaccinated, you have the right to opt out according to the determination, as I've said previously. I believe that's it.
Board members, any question for Mr. Bear? Thank you, Mr. Forget. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. Our next update is a capital project update, and Mr. Ramjug, I believe, is here.
Thank you, Mr. Forget. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So I'll start with our active construction sites, specifically New Windsor Elementary School, the tower demolition site. As of this week, 100% of the site restoration has been completed. Grass is now growing where the tower building previously existed, and the safety fencing has been removed. Our next steps there are the completion of the design, final budgeting of the proposed addition and renovations, then submission to the State Education Department for review and approval. Also, this past week, the CTE site work began. Safety and security fencing and access gates have been installed on West Street, as well as separate individual fencing surrounding each of the structures scheduled to be demolished. As of today, one of those structures had been leveled, and the other will be immediately following the asbestos abatement process. So following removal of the debris from those demolitions, the site clearing and excavation will officially begin. The district took in bids for our Heritage Middle School project, and unfortunately, due to circumstances, we have exceeded our original budget allocations. So currently, we are conducting a full and complete analysis of the bids, the budget, as well as the design plans in preparation to eventually go out for bid a second time. We also, as of this afternoon, took in capital bids for Vailsgate Elementary School, and we'll be vetting those thoroughly and prior to determining the final results. I'm also happy to report that we are entering our last phase of our energy performance contract work, which is predominantly our solar energy expansion. And this has begun at Meadow Hill School, weather permitting. It's scheduled to be completed and energized within 3 to 4 weeks. And the next scheduled site is Temple Hill Academy. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Board members, yes, I see Mr. Stridiron has his hand up.
Thank you, Madam President. The bidding on the Heritage School, is that the first set of bids that came back for the actual construction project for a building? And if so, are you anticipating the construction costs to also be high on other bids?
The answer to both of your questions are yes. We're currently in a very volatile market when it comes to materials and equipment. So we are conducting value engineering and strategizing to work around that as much as possible before we go back out for bid.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands. Mr. Forget.
Thank you, Madam President. That concludes my items for this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Forget. We're now at the section of the agenda for public discussion and comments on agenda items. Please refer to the regulations regarding discussion and comments. Mr. McCoy, do we have anybody for agenda items?
No, ma'am. There's nobody signed up for agenda.
Thank you. Then we're going to move on. I guess it's my section right now. I have items 5.1 through 5.4 as a consent agenda this evening. Would any member like to separate out any of these items? Mr. Stridiron?
I don't want to separate any items, but will there be any time tonight to discuss the busing situation that's a crisis at this point?
So let's vote on this and then I'll call on you and you can, you can bring that up. Okay, we can have a short discussion on the busing, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I don't see any member that would like to separate things out. So I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion on these items? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Green,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein.
Madam President, I did have my hand up late. I'm sorry. I'm going to vote yes. Can I make a comment after we're done?
No, make your comment now and then
Okay,
vote.
thank you. Okay, so in reference to 5411, just some a comment that I think is a reasonable expectation. At this point now, if someone has attendance that's below par, they can appeal for this year by November 24th. I hope someone corrects me if I'm not right. And next year, it's planned that during the summer, they need to appeal if they want to participate in the following year's activities. So my question is, I can see this happening where someone may have 75% attendance, which doesn't entitle them to participate in one school year. And the following year, they get on track, they attend their classes, and they have a 90% attendance rate. And then they decide they want to play a spring sport or they want to act in the play. Their appeal time has been passed up months before, and now we're going by the previous school year, which they may have had a 75% attendance rate, but they're now at 90% in the current year. So I'm wondering if there's any way that a student like that would be able to participate in a sport, just for argument's sake, in the spring, where they've been in excellent shape that school year.
Dr. Roman, can you answer that for us, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. So in situations like that, Mr. Levinstein, it would be that the attendance is looked upon for the previous year. So if previously the student did not meet the attendance requirement, then they would have to submit an appeal for the subsequent year. I believe that's what your question. If it's not, please correct me if I'm wrong, and I'd be more than happy to clarify.
That is my question, that if they decide, if they change their attendance habits and decide the following year that we're going to classes, all the classes, why should they be discouraged from participating in sports? Let's just use spring, for example, where they're now in good standing for the current year, but they were in bad standing for the previous year.
Mr. Forget, can you help us out here?
Yeah, I think we can take what you're saying into consideration, but I also want to make sure that you're aware that there's also, it's not just previous year attendance, it's also current year. Dr. Roman, is that not true based on the New York State Public High School Association? They have to maintain the 85% for the current year?
That's correct, sir.
Well, I understand that.
We'll take into consideration what you're saying with regards to if a student in this current year is not eligible because they did not request an appeal and change their mind, we can set up some kind of adjustment to get that back on track. So we will take your comment and we will go back to policy and we will consider that. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. And yes, I vote.
Thank you. Mr. Howard, I really don't.
I know you're right. I just thought about it. I was going to add to that discussion, but we're not discussing, we're voting. My bad.
Ms. Maida?
I'm sorry.
Ms. Maida?
Oh, yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Ms. Burton?
Yes.
Thank you. We're going to now move on to board committees. We're going to start with the policy committee. Mr. Howard. Oh, wait. Before we do that, I promised Mr. Stridiron we were going to ask, he was going to have a chance to talk about bus thing. So Mr. Howard, hang on one second. Mr. Stridiron, would you like to make your comment or ask your question?
Thank you, Madam President. So I've been seeing a lot of comments from parents regarding the busing situation over the last 2 months, and it doesn't seem to be getting any better. In fact, it's actually seems to getting worse. We have students who are being transported to school in the mornings, but then the parents are told at noon that there's no bus to bring their children home. So there's a couple of problems with that. We had paid the bus companies millions of dollars in the settlement so that they could be ready for September. And this is what the reasoning was, that we have to keep them afloat, help them out so that they would be ready for September. And they weren't ready for September. So are the bus companies being paid for running routes that they're not running? Are we keeping track of every route that's not being run and deducting that from their pay? And what is the solution that the administration has come up with to make sure that not one student doesn't have a bus to come home on?
Mr. Forget, you want to address that or give it to one of your staff?
I will address part of it, and Dr. Spindler will also address. Mr. And this is a national bus shortage. This is not just a Newburgh shortage. This is a countywide shortage. Every school district is confronted with the same situation. We are trying to shift and pivot extended day programs to become virtual so that the students don't lose out on the opportunity for the activities in a virtual world that we can provide. We are moving some of our activities to weekends, such as some of the athletics, and the county is working together to do that because there's more flexibility on the weekends for access to bus drivers and buses for those particular pieces. So we're trying as hard as we can, as are the bus contractors. I do believe that things have improved a little bit, and they know that Dr. Spindler is in the process of pulling all that data together so that we can sit down and have hardcore data for us to take a look at. But Dr. Spindler, can you give us a quick update on that? And can you confirm or deny whether ever told a parent that there's not a bus available to take a student home? It may be delayed, but I don't think, have we denied that?
Yeah, you are correct, Mr. Forget, and unfortunately, it may be delayed. As you stated, it is a national crisis, and we are doing some things to work with the transportation companies, and they are doing some things as well as offering bonus incentive to drivers. We are rerouting students so that any MTC is occupied and rerouted for another student to be able to utilize. We're providing supervision and supports in the schools for students that unfortunately have to wait for the bus to come back around to pick them up. We are also engaging in emergency contracts, bus contracts, for when bus companies tell us that they can't service particular runs. It should be noted that we don't only service within our Newburgh district, we service tens, dozens of schools outside for our special education students that require transportation for over an hour away. So we are servicing those students as well. We collaborated with our local BOCEs to get a list of interested drivers. Note that even when we have a driver, after they're secured, they do have to undergo certification and processes. It's not like if Mr. Stridiron, you were hired today that you can actually start to drive the bus tomorrow. So we are definitely doing that. Unfortunately, we're running into many drivers that are quitting or retiring due to the risk of being exposed to COVID. And and to your question about being paid for services, as we would with any vendor in our district, we have to reconcile bills so that we are only paying services that were actually rendered. Hence, you mentioned the fact that we engaged in a settlement with them because we did not pay for services not rendered at that time. So that reconciliation is a very tedious process, and I commend our transportation team for doing that and making sure that each route is accounted for and reconciled. And there's hundreds of routes every day that need to be reconciled. And we are working as hard as we can and collaborating with the transportation vendors and trying to come up with very innovative ideas. I'm going to be presenting in personnel an opportunity for us to secure 2 of our own drivers so that we can try to alleviate it with the vans that we have, because we only can utilize the vans if you have a driving license, school bus driver's license. But we also understand that that would be taking away from the vendors as well. But we want to try to secure our own drivers. So thank you for bringing this to light. We're going to work on it. We're going to present you some data. Some days are better than others, and it's really unfortunate. And I apologize on the behalf of the transportation vendors and the district, but we are working as diligent and as hard as we can to get students to and from school.
Mr. Stridiron, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I mean, the other day there were 17 runs that were canceled. There are parents and students that are told throughout the day that their child will not have a bus, that they have to come and pick them up, or they can wait until 5 p.m. and take the late bus, or there must be some kind of combination bus home. So they're waiting for 3 hours after school to get on a bus. So I can't imagine having a student at the high school who's supposed to be home by the time their younger siblings get home so they can take them off their buses, getting home later than their siblings. This situation is, you said, yes, it's a nationwide problem, but we have federal monies that we have secured. Why can't we charter another bus company? Forget about the 5 bus companies we deal with. Why can't we go outside and charter our own buses or buy a few buses ourselves and have our own employees who could or may already have the type of licenses needed and drive those buses? Why can't we secure that? Why do we have to put our parents in a situation where they're paying Uber to come pick their kids up from school? And there's also late buses in the morning. Why do we put our parents in that situation? They're paying their taxes, and acceptable. It's 2 months into the school year. This is still occurring.
Dr. Spindler, you had your hand up. Do you want to comment?
Yes, we are looking at other contractors. And then also, even if we had a fleet of buses, we would have difficulty securing those drivers. And we are going to still, like I said, put out or recommend to the board to secure some of our own drivers and look into opportunities to have some. Note that even if you have your own fleet, there are a lot of regulations that are required in regards to being able to maintenance them. We don't have a maintenance shop for them. So I'm looking to see which contractors can help us to maintain them, because they have to be checked and they have to be verified and et cetera. So all of those ideas that you have, Mr. Straight Iron, I assure you that they are being taken into consideration, and we are trying to move forward with this. And thank you. Keep your solutions coming forward, and we will act on them. And all of those solutions you mentioned, we are acting on and trying to implement as fast as we can.
Thank you. We're going to move on to our board committees. Policy Committee, Mr. Howard.
Thank you, Madam President. Right as I go into this, one of the questions that was presented earlier in regards to 5411, which is up for resolution and adoption, I've been approached in the community by a plethora of parents and teachers in regards to the exact question that Mr. Levenstein did ask. So just understanding that this is a living document, I would like for us going forward to try to put a committee together, maybe coaches, drama teachers, students, and try to make this a more student-friendly document, because right now it's not too student-friendly. But tonight on my agenda, we have 4 policies that are up for resolution and adoption. 5411, which is participation and extracurricular activities. 5205, credit recovery and credit accrual programs. We also discussed 8132, which is about health and safety measures during the pandemic and epidemics, and also 5420, student health services, which is going to be a first reading and adoption this evening. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. We're going to go to the Library Committee, Mr. Stradiron.
Thank you, Madam President. The Library Committee met last week, and we discussed one item that's on the resolution for tonight, and also the mandatory board training for public libraries, construction project updates, grant funding updates, and numerous happenings at the library. Things are starting to really pick up, and the library is fully open, and we are looking forward to great opportunities for our students and our community to use our library. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stradiron. We're going to move on to the Personnel Committee. That's me. All items discussed at the Personnel Committee are included in this agenda. We're going to move to the Buildings and Grounds Committee. Mr. Levenstein.
Thank you, Madam President. So the Building and Grounds Committee met October 20th, and the committee discussed with Mr. Velez a lot of things. We discussed the heritage, water pressure problems and the solution, South Middle School fence repairs, district-wide insurance inspection, the NFA and GAMS oil tanks removal, a proposed warehouse stipend, district-wide painting schedule, MERV 13 filter update, GAMS school fence, the new NFA barber classroom, building condition survey update, and the Bombville School Annex demolition. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Levenstein. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction Secondary, Mrs. Soto.
Good evening, Madam President. The Art Division presents to you agenda item 7.1 for the board's consideration and consent.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Ms. Green.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam President. That concludes my item for this evening.
Thank you, Mrs. Soto. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Exceptional Learners, Mr. Bayer.
Thank you, Madam President. Exceptional Learners has one item for this evening's for the board's consideration. It's the recommendations from the CSE and CPSE committees.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Ms. Green,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson.
Yes.
Mr. Bayer. You're muted, sir. Again, you're muted.
All right, I'm having trouble with my computer tonight. Thank you. That concludes my items for this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Bayer. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Finance, Dr. Spindler.
Thank you, Madam President. I present to you in the Board of Education, item 9.1 through 9.4 as a consent agenda for your consideration.
Would any member like to separate out any of these items? I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
Point of order.
Yes.
Somebody should separate out 9.4.
Somebody should separate out 9.4. Oh,
Madam
yes, we
President,
have to adjust 9.4. Go ahead.
Madam President, I move to separate out 9.4.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. I'd like to entertain a motion on 9.1 through 9.3, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion on those items? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Ms. Green,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard.
Yes.
We're going to move on to item 9.4. What do I need? I need a motion to, I need somebody to amend it.
You need to put it on the floor first, ma'am.
Okay, so let's have I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
Motion to add item 9.4.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay, now I need need somebody to tell me how we're going to amend this item. Mr. Forget, can you tell us how you want to amend this item?
Sure. Just at the end, be it resolved. Just trying to say it. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Newburgh Enlarged City School District hereby approves the use of the school district facilities pursuant to the request submitted by the organization, Section 9, Boys Regional Soccer Finals, pending receipt of insurance certificate.
Okay. So I'd like to entertain a motion to amend.
So moved.
Motion to amend.
I need a second.
Second.
Thank you. Questions or discussion? Mr. Levinstein, you had your hand up. Do you have a question?
I did not. I just wanted to add that sentence at the end.
Thank you, Mr. Levinstein. Anybody else? Roll call, Mr. Clerk. This is to amend.
That's correct. Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Ms. Green,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein.
Yes.
So we now have an amended motion on the floor. Mr. McCoy, would you like to poll the board?
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Ms. Green,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida.
Yes.
I'm just trying to follow along here. That concludes my items for this evening, and I
Thank you.
appreciate your support.
Thank you, Dr. Spindler. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, Mr. McLemore, but he's away at what is he away at recruitment, Mr. Forget?
New York State Human Resources Conference in Cooperstown with Mrs. Van.
Thank you. So Dr. Roman is going to do his section. Dr. Roman?
Thank you, Madam President. Under the Human Resources agenda, I present items 10.1 through 10.22 for the board's consideration as a consent agenda.
Thank you. Would any member like to separate out any of these items? I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Stridiron,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Ms. Green,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo.
Yes.
Thank you. That concludes my items.
Thank you, Dr. Roman. We're going to move on to the clerk of the board, Mr. McCoy.
Thank you, Madam President. I have the approval of minutes from October 12th and October 19th.
Would any member like to separate out any of these items? I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Ms. Green,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida, Ms. Maida, Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron.
Yes.
That concludes my items, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. We're now at the portion of the agenda for public discussion on non-agenda items. Please refer to the procedure sheet. Mr. McCoy, would you like to introduce our speaker?
Yes, ma'am. You have one person signed up for public speaking. That's Ms. Dawn Fuchek. She's now in the room, ma'am. Ms. Fuchek, you have 5 minutes.
Good evening, Dawn Fuchek, 234 Orleans Road, Newburgh, New York. Under existing public officers state law, section 104, number 4, members must publicly notice from where they are virtually participating. In other words, publicly notice their location. This practice is not changed by the new law that reauthorized the ability of school boards and other local governments to meet virtually, that the governor has just signed on September 2nd. I'd like to know where I can find this public notice. I also would like to reiterate to this board that this reauthorization that gives school boards is not mandated. I want to remind you that currently the Newburgh School Board is the only board in all of Orange County that has chosen to return to virtual meetings. In addition, all local governments in Orange County are also meeting in person. It certainly makes one wonder why this board is the only public entity in Orange County that finds it necessary to hold their meetings virtually. Once again, just because you can doesn't mean that you should. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. Is there anyone else that has signed up to speak?
That's it, ma'am.
Thank you. I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Mr. Clerk?
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Ms. Green,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard.
Yes.